a special episode of TCS Conversations. October 10 is globally observed as a Mental Health Awareness Day. We caught up with a very special guest. She wears many hats. She is the head of Wellness and Safety at TCS, and more importantly, she is the global head of TCS Cares, which is our mental health initiative. Welcome to the show, Sangeeta.
Thank you so much, Priyanka. It's my pleasure to be here.
So straight off the bat, I want to understand what is the importance of organizations to talk about well-being.
You know, organizations, what are organizations? Organizations are people, right? And people come with everything. People come with their lives, their homes, their work, and everything together. They're a whole package. And when we think about a whole package, it is really important to consider everything that goes on with them. Till quite recently, we did take care of various things like their physical fitness, we took care of their comfort at work and things like that. But I'm really glad that the world has evolved and we've begun to understand and consider that what they bring most importantly to work, which is their minds and their hearts and their souls, is something that we need to take care of as well. So which is why taking care of that is really important. The other very brass tack reason for that is that, you know, mental health and well-being is very clearly linked to productivity. And organizations which take care of their people who are well, people who bring their whole selves, are able to contribute fully to the organization. Otherwise, you know, you have absenteeism, but you also have something called as presentism,
right,
which means that you come to work, but you're not fully there. So what's the use? So which is why well-being is really important to take care of. So I would say in a nutshell, well-being is every aspect of your life, and if that functions well, you're well.
So that's a very holistic understanding of well-being. But I want to take a step back and understand what is mental well-being. So when we say mental well-being, what does it constitute?
So, you know, it's very easy to answer this because WHO has actually defined this very clearly. And WHO says that mental well-being is a state of being where a person can bring themselves to work, where they feel whole, where they can contribute to the rest of the world, and they can be functional fully when they're going through difficult times, small or big. Now, when it is very big, of course, we understand that you're not very well. But if in small things that you're not feeling too well, then you're fine, your mental well-being is fine.
So, Sangeeta, you bring up the pandemic, right? So, in many ways, the pandemic was a tipping point for everyone. We were cooped up in our homes, and mental health took a new meaning then. So, what was, you know, your experience, and, you know, how did TCS Cares sort of bring in some relief for our associates?
So one thing is, you know, Priyanka, I think the fact that we at TCS understood that mental health is something that we need to support more fully is something we came to a realization a few years ago when we set up.
That's before the pandemic?
Before the pandemic, much before the pandemic. And, you know, as an organization, we've always been ahead of the time. So we always had an EAP service for many, many years. But, you know,
So when you say EAP service?
So EAP service is Employee Assistance Program, which is our counseling services, which are usually external people who provide these services, because it's really important to put arm's length between providing this service so that people know and feel safe, that, you know, there's confidentiality, that the person who is supporting them has no organizational, reasons to support other than just supporting you as a person. So that's an EAP service. It's provided, of course, free of cost, and it's confidential. TCS does not get any report of any person and what they're talking about to the counselor at all. It's really important to know that and understand that, right?
I think it's also important to feel safe to come out and talk about it.
Absolutely. So EAP service is available, but having an EAP service was probably not enough, and we needed to make sure that we begin to develop a culture where people can feel safe talking about their mental health. We needed to find spots where stigma is something that we begin to take care of. We needed to take care of things like fear about what happens when, if somebody reveals that they have an emotional health problem, and how do they get perceived by their peers, by their managers, by the organization. So these are some of the things which needed to be taken care of, and so therefore when we set up TCS Cares, we set it up with the intent of creating awareness and understanding about mental health. We decided that we needed to create also acceptance through conversations and different things, and then of course provide support. And support was not just through the EAP service but also through self-help resources, which would help people to begin to take charge of their mental health well before they reached a crisis point where they needed to go to a counselor to really help and support them, right? And of course create community where we can have conversations like this one or many others where we can do that. So we had TCS Cares, but I have to say that the pandemic was a disruptor in so many different ways, including mental health. I think mental health really found a seat at the top table because of the pandemic, and the realization that people and organizations got that this is really important. So it really made a huge difference. And the kind it was also important to review what was happening during the pandemic, which was changing literally on a weekly and a monthly basis, and to respond with the kind of support systems that people needed. I think the pandemic really helped us to grow this area of supporting mental health and well-being in a way which probably would have taken us another 10 years in the world to do.
So Sangeeta, you did mention stigma, right? And the pandemic did bring in mental health at the top of the table, and everybody's talking about it. And yet there are some barriers when it comes to talking about mental health. What are those barriers?
So yes, so while we've made some strides, I think we have a long way to go. And I would say that long ways not just here in our country in India, but it is across the world. So different cultures look at mental health and the way we speak about it in different ways, right? In some cultures, on a personal level, it might be okay to talk about mental health. It is quite acceptable that people talk about going to their therapist and having sessions. And in some cultures, it is very clear that people believe that, mental health is not something that our families go through, or ye hamare yahan nahi hota hai. So things like that, right? So it could be different things which drive the ability of people to be able to speak about these things. The other thing is about the workplace. So how do we create an environment where people begin to feel safe to talk about it at the workplace? Because quite naturally people feel that if I was to talk about the fact that I have mental health issues, how would I be perceived? Would I get right opportunities? Would people think I'm strong enough to be able to handle stress and pressure?
Do I have the ability to do it?
Absolutely. So so those are some of the barriers and the stigma which come immediately to the fore. And that is something that we will have to work continuously on to ensure that we find ways to slowly and steadily chip away at this, and to reach a time and space where we can have these conversations openly. I think we've come a long way. I love this example where while we've had counselors at work, but most people are happier to use the telephonic mode or the chat mode or email, or with a counselor in the privacy of their own spaces. But we do have counselors at the workplace, right? We have our counselors who come into our offices and they're available. And in our OHC centers, in our occupational health centers, where we have our doctors come in, we also have the counselors come in. And now where you can see people coming and waiting for the doctor to meet the doctor, you can also see people waiting to see the counselor, which is wonderful, I think, because
it's quite an achievement.
Yes, that they're not worried about the fact that somebody in the organization is actually seeing them sitting outside a counselor. It is acceptable, it's fine. I have to tell you, the most heartening thing that I have seen.
What was the starting point of TCS Cares?
So as I said, I worked. The organization gave me a chance to work in the area of safety. We set up Safety First a few years ago, and the reasons for doing that was because our leadership realized that it was very important that our people understand what personal safety is. And through that journey, we began to have conversation on various areas of safety, and we realized that emotional safety was a huge area that people were, when we used to go and do sessions on the floor and things like that, people would come quietly to the side and talk about things which are not related to, say, safety from crime or physical safety or road safety. They would talk about their emotions. And that is how we realized that the organization is ready, it is ripe, the time is right And during that time, my interest in this area grew, and I decided to train to become a counselor. So I'm an integrative counseling therapist. And when I did that, it gave me the ability to have the confidence to go up to the organization and talk to Ritu and Ritu Anand and say that, we need to do this, we need to bolster this, we need to strengthen this area. And the organization gave me the chance to actually set this up. So it's
This was when?
This was in 2018, and we set this up in 2018.
That's much before the pandemic.
Yes, absolutely.
So, and now taking the learnings of the pandemic ahead, and I'm a personal beneficiary of TCS Cares. So, I would really like to understand what are the offerings under TCS Cares that our associates can sort of get help from.
So as I said, of course, we have our EAP service, we have our counseling services which are available to our people, completely free, completely confidential. It is also available to families. After the pandemic, we realized that it was important that we make these services available to the families of our people as well. So it's available to families as well. Then we have a multitude of self-help resources, whether it is training sessions, whether it is webinars around various subjects. Subjects could be as varied as, how do I cope with confidence issues, to parenting, some webinars, to how to deal with anxiety, to how to deal with anger. Then we have support for our managers to show our managers how they can manage the teams with empathy, with care. So, those manager sensitization sessions, same thing for HR as well. A big, result of these sessions is that we have something called as manager or HR referral, where managers or HR can actually see that something is going on with somebody and refer them to TCS Cares so that we can offer them the help that they need. These referrals have grown from the time of inception and continue to grow, which is incredible. Shows where the organization is, right? So shows us that. And we have something called as our peer support function, where we train people internally to become emotional or mental health first aiders. And all these things, Priyanka, I am very proud to say, result in something that we measure as a number called lives saved. And the fact that all this support, all this awareness leads to people themselves becoming aware that they should seek out help before it is too late, or other people being able to see that they need help and supporting them, leads to people being, especially people who are in severe need of help, being brought back from the brink of something that they could have done. And that, I think, is the number that I'm the proudest of. Recently, there was this young man who called, and he said he didn't know who I was first, and he said, I just saw this TCS Cares number on Ultimatics and I thought I would call. And I said, yes, tell me how I can help you. And he started to talk, and we spoke for almost an hour. And through that conversation, by the end of the conversation, he said, thank you so very much, because you don't know it, but you actually helped me make a decision which, has changed the decision that I had already made about my life. And I've changed that, and you helped save my life.
That's such a powerful experience.
It, even now it gives me goosebumps. And every time you do that, it humbles you, and it also makes you believe that, everything that you do is so worth it.
Sangeeta, just a little bit going into resilience and adaptability. We are coming out of the pandemic, and things are changing very fast. And things were changing really fast during the pandemic, but now it's faster. So how does one adapt to the situation?
So, as I said earlier, at different times of how the world is changing, we need different attributes, different skills that are needed to deal with what's going on with us. And during the pandemic, the most important thing was to take care of the immediate sense of safety and security of our people, to handle their anxiety, their stress, right? And after that, now that we're coming back to supposedly the normal world, it is important to be able to deal with that as well. So, definitely, we spent two years in going back into our home. We had many different lessons, realizations. Now that we have to come back to the real world, we need to adapt to that as well, right? I know how many people, who speak about when they first stepped out of their homes after the pandemic were literally scared because, they felt threatened by just being out on the streets, out on the
There was a
roads.
lot of anxiety
Around that, right? People looked at each other like, oh, you're going to definitely give me COVID now,
That's true.
So that sense was always there. But I think at some level, there is this whole aspect of resilience, which is really important for all of us as human beings, because that is the one which is actually going to see us through this crazy, mad world that we are all living in now. Right? Every day there is some crisis or the other. Every day there is some challenge that we have to face and sort of deal with. Every day there is a change which we believe we never thought would ever have to be dealt with, right? And the only way to do that is to develop resilience. And so therefore, I really believe that the next paradigm for mental health really is about helping people build resilience.
So, Sangeeta, then what is resilience? How does one build that resilience muscle that you talk about?
So, just like Priyanka, you go to the gym to build your various muscles, right? And it takes time,
It
right?
does.
And we subject ourselves to weight training or to pulling something, or I'm not a gym person, but those are all the things that we do, right?
Neither am I.
Yeah. And then we have these six packs, so we have the different kinds of muscles that we have, and it takes time to do that. In the same way, just like you're saying, it's a resilience muscle. It takes time. It takes stretching. It takes a little bit of tension on that, on what is happening with you, to be able to deal with it and slowly develop that muscle. It is also important to face a challenge and learn from it.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's a beautiful saying by, somebody who works in this field called Dr. Sven Hansen, who says that you need to not just bounce back, but you need to bounce forward,
Right.
And that I think is really important, because what's the point of facing challenges, having things happen to you, and then going right back to who you were? Every little thing that happens to you changes you. Changes you at the most organic level. And shouldn't that change you for the better?
Yeah. How do you grow?
Yes. How do you
the
grow?
learnings?
So that is really important, and we need to learn that. We need to build that muscle within our people through their various experiences. Doesn't necessarily mean that we need to subject them to adversity, because we have enough adversity around us. So to be able to consciously show people that if this was the adversity, how did we cope? To learn from each other, to listen to other people's stories, and be inspired and actually pick that up and apply that to your own life.
Just one last question for people watching. There might be people who are going through a difficult time, or there might be people who don't even know that they're going through a difficult time. What is your message to them?
I think my message is that become really conscious about who you are. Watch out for the various things that are happening with you. So sometimes you will spiral down, sometimes you will fly high, right? And when you're beginning to spiral, catch yourself at that time. Seek help, and the help necessarily is not always only a counselor.
Mm-hmm.
Seek help from friends, family. Know that seeking help is a sign of strength, and it is not a weakness. So do that from the people around you. And if you can't find that, seek help from a counselor as well. And sometimes talking to a counselor does not mean that you need to be at the brink of something. You can even talk to a counselor just to clarify your thoughts. So do that. So that is something which is really important. And to everybody, to say that, all of us go through difficult times, because emotional health is a spectrum. Just like physical health, one day you may have a fever and one day somebody might be having a heart attack. Same way, one day you may be, stressed. The next day you may have anxiety. On another day, you might have something very serious going on with you. So understand that emotional health is not something which is, different from any other part of your health. Treat it as such for yourself and for others, and help yourself and help others.
And the takeaway for me from this conversation is seeking help is a strength. It's not a sign of weakness. And on that note, Sangeeta, I would like to thank you for talking to us today, taking time out, and touching upon such really important issues. Thank you so much, Sangeeta. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you so much, Priyanka. It was wonderful talking to you, and also wonderful to be sitting here in this lovely open environment full of lovely green nature. Thank God it didn't rain. Wonderful, wonderful conversation. Thank you, Priyanka.
Thank you.